Well, good Thursday morning. Thank you for joining us. I'm Marlon Bowling, your tour guide to the ag commodities. Well, we every Thursday get information from USDA. It's related to our weekly totals of export sales. And well, today is no different. Let's take a look at the numbers of export sales that we racked up here this past week. Some interesting numbers in the batch here this time around. So as we walk through these, let's start with the corn at the top of the list here. On the corn, we had total sales of 760,800 tons here this past week. The soybeans came in just barely, just barely over 1 million tons. It came in at 1.01 million tons. The corn number compared to last week, they say the old crop version or current crop version of that was down 45%. On the soybeans, that was down about 27% from a week ago. So maybe a bit of a concern there. Now the soy meal came in at 86,600 tons. And we had soy oil at 1,900 tons. That usually doesn't register a whole lot there on the oil. The wheat, 275,600 tons this time around, and that was actually down 24% from last week. And last week wasn't that great. So that's a bit of a concern on that one. But when we roll the page, if you look at the next amount of commodity sales on grain sorghum, wow, we had 379,500 tons of grain sorghum sold last week. Holy mackerel, that was a lot of grain sorghum that was sold, or milo as I like to call it. In fact, they say that was a marketing year high, and the week before we hardly had sold any. So they say that was a 99% increase. Wow. And upland cotton, not to be outdone, the cotton was amazing. Look at this, 544,900 running bales for the current and upcoming marketing years. And that was a marketing year high on cotton sales. Just outstanding. Then we had the rice coming in with 93,500 tons, and that was up 44% from the previous week. So while things may have been a bit of a yawner on the first page, when you get to the second page of commodities, that was pretty impressive. So kudos to all those producers out there for getting some sales accomplished. I want to bring in Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions, and we'll talk about these numbers. So corn, soybeans, and wheat, not all that exciting, Brian, but the rest of them, that was pretty strong this time around.
Yeah, and the ones we're mostly focused on, Marlon, is the corn, soybeans, and wheat. And nothing exciting there, as you mentioned. Wheat actually hit a 14-week low. We are seeing the corn sales at a 4-week low, I believe, and soybeans at about a 4-week low. China's, by far and away the best buyer of U.S. soybeans. They bought about 35 million bushels of the 37 million this week. And so if we didn't have them, our sales would be very, very slow. The corn sales, Mexico stands out as a good buyer there. They continue to be a good buyer. The problem with wheat is, it's just there's no one that's buying it. There was some rumors yesterday that China was in Kansas City meeting with some delegates, and that helped to rally the wheat market, but no announcements of any purchases that were made of that wheat market. So I think it's going to be a struggle for here on out, especially for that wheat market. Soybeans, we have this window here between now and we get into February, March, April timeframe where Argentina's supplies start to hit the market, Brazil starts to hit the market, where we can have strong soybean meal sales and soybeans, and to a lesser extent corn. So, we really have to make up ground, so to speak, here in these next several months. And for wheat, we're just matching what we need to be on a weekly basis to hit the USDA forecast. For corn, we're just slightly above what we need to be. In soybeans, they're slightly above where we need to be as well.
Okay, let's look at the prices. Now, these sales numbers came out at 7:30 Central Time. But the trade carries on for a few minutes after that. Let's see how we wrapped up the Globex trade then. On the corn, it was just a bit softer. It was a penny and a quarter lower on nearby December. It closed at 473 3/4, pretty close to the low of the overnight session, although again, it was so quiet that it was only about 3 cents wide from the top to the bottom. On soybeans this morning, now they gained a little bit. You had January going up 8 1/4 at 13.23 1/4. That would be roughly 4 cents off of its overnight high. In the wheat market in Chicago today, we had December 2 3/4 lower at $5.59 per bushel. Meanwhile, on the Kansas City market here this morning, we had December down 2 1/2. It was at 637 1/2. So while it looks like, or it looked anyway, like maybe the market was trying to base out yesterday, it failed. Spring wheat trade in Minneapolis, December, now just 1 tick higher at 709 1/4. And can't leave out the cotton. Well, in the cotton market, in the overnight trade, it was 45 points higher at 79.89. We'll see if they can build on that with these big, strong export sales. We'll come back in just a moment, and we had some beef and pork numbers to talk about as well. We'll discuss with Brian Hoops after this. All right, we're talking with Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions here on a Thursday morning. Hope you're doing well. All right, Brian, we went through the grain export sales. We had meat numbers that came out this morning from USDA. Let's take a look at what they were compared to a week ago. On the beef, we had a total, and I always combine the current calendar year sales and next year as well, whatever they show on the register there. So we had a combined total of 18,800 tons. Now, the current calendar year portion was 17,100 tons. That was actually down slightly, down 2% from what we had a week ago. But from the overall 71% average, remember a couple of weeks ago when it was basically nothing, it is up about 71% from the 4-week average. Pork sales, they actually picked up about 10%. 31,600, including 31,100 just for this year. The thing that jumped out at me, Brian, was the fact that China bought about 6,600 tons of beef, but they didn't even show up on the buyer list for pork at all, and we still had over 30,000 sales. So I thought that was a little interesting, even without their help.
Right. Yeah, it is interesting, and it's a good indication that there's good demand for pork. I'm not sure that it's going to matter in the futures market today. We had an outside day lower, and hogs are traded so technically that they'll probably just ignore these exports numbers and focus on that reversal day and have some follow through selling would be my guess. Now, cattle are traded more fundamentally, so they should take this export number, as a supportive number, especially that China was in there buying. Fact that we had some 185 cash trade in the plains yesterday is a supportive feature. If we have more of that at that level, that's going to feel like a victory, I think, for a lot of the trade. To have that steady money, and you have December holding a pretty big discount to that cash trade, and probably too much of a discount if we're going to have the bulk of the trade in that 185 range. So fundamentally, the cattle market might be a little undervalued yet, and should try and pair some of that discrepancy between the cash and the futures, of course, with the lower cutout values holding us back from having any type of a real strong rally.
Well, let's recap how we closed yesterday on live cattle. We had December closing 7 higher yesterday. February was up 55 cents at the end of the day at 185.17. On the feeder cattle market, you had January up 82 at 238.02. They were solidly higher all across the board. And then on the lean hogs that Brian was talking about, they did flip around and go lower by triple digits on the nearbys. December was down $1.57 at 70.15. We'll see if they can straighten that up here today after these good export sales numbers. Thanks, Brian, for the help. We'll catch up with you again tomorrow. Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions with us on a very busy Thursday morning. Christina, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Doing well. How about you?